The Milwaukee Bucks picked up a hard-fought victory over the Sacramento Kings to kick off a 4-game road trip. Heavy emphasis on the hard fought in this game. We're going to break down the Bucks win, plus take a look ahead at the road trip facing the Bucks on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network out here, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and co-host of the Technical Foul podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod, founder of brewhoop.com, and we appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks that first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And the Bucks, with the victory over the Kings tonight, moved to 16-20 on the season. Bucks are actually now 4-1 with Giannis back in the fold after coming back from that calf injury. We'll be breaking down the game for sure. In addition to that, talking a little bit about, are the Bucks showing signs of growth and what does success look like on this road trip? But what we have to start with is this game against the Kings, fourth quarter in particular. Well, really the third, because things were looking really good for the Bucks in this game. In the first half, the first quarter was a little shaky at times. I felt like they got a little ISO heavy to end the first quarter. They started the second quarter off with some beautiful ball movement, got the score up, went into halftime with a healthy lead. And then the third quarter came and the Bucks continued to add to that. Next thing you know, the Kings go on a run to close the quarter. At the end of the quarter, they're only down by, I believe, 16 at the end of the third, which sounds still like a big amount there. They were up by as many as 26. Fourth quarter happens, and the Bucks just kind of got punched in the mouth. Nothing was falling. The Kings had momentum. They were getting their way. They got it down to a 3-point game before Kevin Porter Jr. made some free throws and got going a bit, and then Giannis as well. It felt like Kevin Porter Jr. and Giannis were the closers for this team tonight. In a fourth quarter that got really, really chippy. It's a game that had over 60 free throws as it is. And honestly, Frank, it feels like they could have called at least 8-9 more fouls in this game and pushed that free throw margin up even more. But I thought overall, the Bucks had me nervous for a second there, but they found a way to pull it out in the fourth.
Yeah, I'm like, when you said hard fought, right? It's remarkable how like little of this game actually being like kind of like tense and close. And like on the one hand, like letting a 26-point lead travel all the way to 3 is like, it kind of, I guess, check the box on the, like, the Bucks just can't let us have nice things checklist that has seemingly followed us around all season. But, again, like 17-point road win, I'm never going to complain too much about that. I think the response was really good. First half, Kings were 1 of 11 from 3. You should have a big lead at halftime when, you're playing a team that is not good defensively and cannot shoot from 3. And, as soon as they sort of started to get a little bit things going there early in the fourth quarter, you saw it kind of flip a bit, and the Bucks, started off. They had to bring obviously Giannis back, and thankfully, Giannis, for all of, Westbrook, the kind of them putting Westbrook on Giannis in the fourth quarter, kind of igniting them a little bit from the Sacramento side. Giannis still had 13 points in the fourth quarter, and along with KPJ, pretty much, ended that comeback. And 37 from Giannis, first game that he goes over 30 minutes since returning, I think, which is a nice milestone early in the fourth quarter. I think around like 8 minutes, 7-8 minutes, maybe 7 something. There was a stoppage, and you could see him like gesturing, like annoying, like he was annoyed to the bench, and you could tell it was because Kuzma was going to come in for him, and he was just like, no, dude, it's not happening. And I don't know how many more points he scored like directly after that, but he must have had another like I don't know, 7 or 9 points. He had a 3-point play mixed in there. He was hitting his free throws, 11 of 13 from the foul line, and it's 13 of 17 from the field. So, it's like, okay, like Russ had a couple of, moments of annoyance and poked the ball free here and there and whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, Giannis is a problem solver. You put a small guy on him, he will find a way to use his size. If you put big guys on him, he'll find his ability to use his speed. And, at the end of the day, like the Kings didn't have anything that worked for more than, a few possessions at a time. So Giannis doing Giannis things ultimately, as has been the theme here since he returned. And I think the other guy obviously that deserves a lot of credit is KPJ. Her slow, bad start on Friday night, ends up kind of figuring things out a little bit towards the end of that Charlotte game, which, again, was a much closer game than certainly like in terms of, net impressive performances, like tonight's game against Sacramento plus 17. You'd feel much better about that than a 1-point win at home against the Hornets. But, KPJ and Giannis combining there at the end of the game on Friday for that nice empty side pick and roll, which is kind of like their best action, and they go to it. Giannis and KPJ execute it really well for the Giannis dunk, and they dodge a bullet there at the end when the Hornets missed their last shot. And then you go out on the road, and obviously the Wizards' loss last week was a huge, deflating loss. And watch the Charlotte game could have been another just gut punch, but it wasn't. You win that game, you make the plays you need to late. And then in this game, KPJ, I thought there was a sequence. He had a 3-point play. I think when it got down to like maybe 4, 5, and then he had the 3 when they were up 3. I think it was 88-85. He drew the foul on the 3-point shot and makes 3 free throws. I think they came down. He had a very awkward hesitation floater thing that went in and drew an offensive foul on the other end on Drew Eubanks, and then Giannis scored on the subsequent possession as well to put it back. I think that put them back up to 10. So obviously, with KPJ, it's like consistency is always the big question with him. And I thought, he came through when they needed him to. I think he had 25 and 10 and only 2 turnovers, only one live ball turnover. 10 of those points in the fourth. Giannis had 13 in the fourth. So those guys were the closers, and Miles Turner had a couple late threes just for good measure. So I mean, these couple games coming up obviously are going to be, I'd say, much more difficult on paper, certainly. And so you really wanted to bank this win because, again, Warriors and Lakers are not the beasts of the West or something, but Bucks are not going to be favored in those games. So get a win now and, keep at least some good vibes going, and then see what you can do here the rest of this week.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think part of why I wanted to say that this game was hard fought was not just because of the physicality or the final score, but what they had to mentally get over to in this particular game as that lead struck down for them, and the way they responded to that. So want to dive more into the response of the Bucks when things got tight, because as we have seen throughout the season, sometimes this Bucks team can get punched in the mouth and then they kind of fold, but that was not the case in Sacramento tonight. So more on that right after this. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or you're jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high pressure football matchups every weekend, I mean, y'all just saw the AFC North game, how that was decided. We got wild card football coming up. You have elite hoops happening every single night. The action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. I personally love the flexibility of options that you have on Prize Picks. Like, you can do a flex play where you can still get paid even if one of your picks misses. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On NBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And please gamble responsibly. We appreciate you, as I said, for tuning in to Locked On Bucks, making it that first listen day in and day out. You already live your team every day. So take it up a level and go on ahead and sign up for the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Bucks, no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. So go to lockedonbucks.supercast.com or just check the link in the show notes to learn more. Now, Frank, I mentioned the hard fought aspect of this. When the lead shrunk down to 3 for the Bucks, I was sitting here like, okay, we're in danger. We are very much so in the danger zone. I mean, even when the fourth quarter opened and the Kings hit back-to-back threes to make it a 10-point game, Doc called that first timeout very early, tried to get the team settled, and the Kings continued to score. The Bucks could not find a bucket. And then, as we talked about, the Bucks were able to find a response. We've seen this team at times when things get physical or they feel like calls aren't going their way. We have seen this team stop back, complain to the refs, not get back on defense themselves. Did not see that despite the physicality that this game had for them. Even when the score got to the 3-point mark and there were no more timeouts called at that point to try to right the ship on the court, they had to figure it out together, and they found a way. We mentioned Kevin Porter Jr. being huge to kind of spark that fourth quarter, not comeback or turnaround, but just kind of putting the pressure back on the gas pedal for the team. And then Giannis continued on with his just excellence in this game as well, despite getting thrown around, despite getting shoved to the ground. The Nass is picking up texts from the bench because he didn't like the way things were being called. This Bucks team didn't get rattled. Ryan Rollins has not even just a black eye. He has like a black half quarter of his face after this game because it was just that kind of game. It was chippy. Westbrook was talking. Dennis Schroeder was talking. And the Bucks did not let that get into their head in this game. They continued to play. They executed down the stretch, which is something else that we have seen this team falter at times throughout the season. So ultimately, I thought that this win, although a bit more stressful than I hoped. I was hoping to be able to actually watch that Steelers-Ravens game a little bit closer, but couldn't because the fourth quarter of this game became a little bit more tight than expected. But I was actually kind of proud at the way that the Bucks responded in this game, given the things that we've seen them do so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the crowd, obviously get into it. I mean, Russ was like, like his energy was super important, and they kind of actually buckled down defensively for that stretch. And again with the Bucks, it's like I mean, this is the thing, right? Like KPJ in general has been really good this year. You've gotten probably the best version of Kyle Kuzma that you could have reasonably hoped for. Excellent. Ryan Rollins has made this big leap, and then you have Giannis, who is the metronome and averaging over a point a minute, literally like putting up like scoring rate numbers that only Wilt Chamberlain has eclipsed once, in his 50-point per game season. So you're what you're gonna get from Giannis, but everybody else, like, look, it's a young group, a group that is being asked to do more than they have in the past, especially for teams that this is a winning team that you are trying to get to 500 to start because there are real expectations. This isn't KPJ's Houston days or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think the response was, as you said, was really important. I mean, you could say the same about the Charlotte game on Friday, right? I mean, they were down. How much were they down? Like
16, I think.
Yeah, like they were down big in the first half, and then trailed for obviously long stretches in the second half. Had to really battle back into that game, and multiple opportunities where like you saw against Washington, like it nearly breaks the wrong way. But you saw obviously guys make big plays. Ryan Rollins hitting a pull-up three in that game on Friday. Kuzma hitting a huge three to give them the lead with 10 seconds left. Unfortunately, Kuzma then fouled finally out.
It's the cool experience.
I called it the full Kuzma experience. It was mostly good. Okay, so like that wasn't necessarily meant to be like a complete negative sentiment. But it kind of is what it is. So yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from this Bucks team when the pressure is on, and fortunately tonight was the good version of that. And the Kings, I think what you saw in that first 2.5 quarters, they have some really talented like individual like players. Whether it's DeRozan, obviously we know how he can go to work to get his spots. Zach LaVine came off the bench for the first time and I don't know how long, but he came off the bench and looked, I'd say, very spry. He gave them a nice shot in the arm early, even though they started to dig a hole relatively quickly. So they have guys that can make plays, and of course Dennis Schroeder has tormented the Bucks many times. And Russ, I mean, it's interesting because like Russ still has these like stretches where he plays like winning basketball, but I still feel like at the end of the day, like this version of Russ, especially in this situation, like what was he, 1 for 8, something like that from 3? It's just felt like let's let Russ get excited and shoot some jump shots, and I feel like eventually the math will break your way. So yeah, I mean, I think credit to the Bucks for keeping their heads in terms of executing and scoring and defending well enough, especially just given some of the physicality, the extracurriculars, etc. That happened in this game with the chippiness and especially with Russ and Schroeder. There was that play late, or not late, but like midway through the fourth when the Bucks sort of started to extend a little bit, where it was a little bit weird because like Russ kind of went like tumbling, but it looked like Russ was like initiating contact with Giannis as he was going through the lane. So I don't really see why like Russ would, I mean, again, because he's crying for some help, but like if anything, probably Russ should have gotten the foul, and then he goes like flying off, that GIF, Camille, of the Joker character. I think it's like a stuntman and from the actual movie, the Joker movie, when he just goes like sliding like across the ground, like just gets chucked. That was like Russ was like getting like chucked to the ground, chucking himself to the ground. And then Schroeder comes and gives Giannis a nice little 2-hander in the back to push him to the ground. No calls. Anyway, it went in for the Bucks, so like whatever, it's fine. But yeah, let's just say we've had some spicy games with the Kings. Obviously the first game this season, you really wish you had that one back. The non-call on Russ late in that game on Giannis. The like wrap up form tackle thing on Giannis by Russ early in that game. And then of course, like going back a couple of years, right? The Trey Lyles, Giannis, Brooke Lopez incident, which, we can look back and still kind of laugh at late in that game. So yeah, I don't know, for two teams that only play twice a year, and like, it's not like there's any, it's not like there's ever going to be any playoff history between the Kings and Bucks, but for some reason, like there's been some, a little history of spice between these teams the last couple of years. So, yeah, I was happy that they got built up a big enough lead that they could just let Giannis sit out the last couple minutes. Don't worry about, him getting, I don't know, like Dennis Schroeder diving into his knees or something like that. There was that Precious Achua play
where that happened earlier in the game.
Yeah, I think what was it? Yeah, was that in the third maybe, where Achua like went down and then basically just like pulled Giannis down by his arm?
Third, I think. Yeah,
and Giannis's knee, it was like it gave you a moment of pause because it looked like he could have easily like bent his knee awkwardly.
And Giannis's response to that too was what caught my, like, he just started hollering words that we cannot say on this podcast without getting in trouble. It was loud and forceful. So when he stayed in the game after that too, I was just kind of like, okay, like seems like he's okay. And watching him play, it looked like it was just maybe a moment of just pain from the fall into his leg.
Yeah. So anyway, happy to get out of Sacramento with what was ultimately a comfortable win. Good win for the, I mean, I was going to check. I haven't checked yet, but have the Bucks had a bigger point differential win on the road this season?
On the road?
I don't think so. I mean, they just won in Charlotte by 10, but that's probably about as comfortable, at least from a final score perspective, as they've had. So
So I think their other biggest win so far was against Brooklyn, but that was at home, and that was a
Right.
17-point victory too.
Yeah. And that game was like 30 points at one point, right? Like
Yeah.
that was and that was generally a much more comfortable game. But let's not talk about Brooklyn game. Brooklyn, or man, God, Camille, like just thinking about these, like the games
The ones they should have had.
you pissed away, like 2 games against the Wizards, the game against the game in Brooklyn.
First
You know,
Kings
I mean,
game.
exactly. I mean, it's just like, this is, I mean, you can't get them back, right? But this is the frustration looking at their record. You know, you just take care of business in some of these games that you should have. You could easily be, you know, a little over 500, but it is what it is. You're, I think, at least a half game from the 10th spot. Yay. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, just at this point, just winning basketball games, watching Giannis be awesome. I'm trying to keep it simple as a fan here to enjoy very basic things. And, you know, we'll see kind of how things trend here, you know, over the next few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point about not being able to go back and change things, they can't. So hopefully that what we saw in Sacramento tonight with the way that this team responded, what we saw against Charlotte, that there are signs of continued growth. Like we've seen growth from some of the younger players on this team, but as a whole, the collective, just seeing growth from them. And we're going to need to continue to see more of that as they continue on this road trip, because the Sacramento Kings was the only team on this 4-game road trip that has a record under 500 that the Bucks will face. So taking a look ahead of what's in front of the Bucks on this road trip, as well as what would make this road trip successful in our opinions right after this. This episode is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think, it's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Plus, it works right from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, this 4-game road trip that the Bucks are currently on, played tonight, Sunday night in Sacramento. They get a few days off before they play the Warriors on Wednesday. Then they play the Lakers on Friday, and they end the 4-game road trip in Denver on Sunday. With this team, with the record being as it is, as you mentioned, they're starting to make some ground. They're now tied in the loss column with the Hawks. Both have 20 losses at this point. Bucks are still sitting in that 11 seed. But hey, who knows what can happen at the end of this road trip, which brings me to my question for you, Frank. What would the Bucks record need to be on this road trip for you to consider this a successful road trip, given the fact that now they've kicked it off with a win in Sacramento, but the competition is going to be a little bit tougher? And the other flip side to that is but they're also going to be catching some teams, the Lakers and the Nuggets in particular, I think at advantageous points in the season, given some injuries that those teams are facing at the moment as well.
So I think coming into the trip, if you told me 2-2, I would have said, I guess I'll take that. You know, I'd look at it as the Kings game and then the Nuggets game because of no Jokic. I believe
Aaron Gordon's back now.
Aaron Gordon is now back. And Christian Brown is now also, at least he was questionable for the last game, so I don't know if he played or not, but he's presumably going to be back for that game coming up. So they're starting to get healthy, but no Jokic, no Valanciunas either. So a distinct lack of size, you know, from the Nuggets in that game. But I figured between those kind of, Sacramento being Sacramento, Denver missing kind of obviously their superstar. 2-2 was probably like a decent outcome at least. Now that you've banked the first game, obviously, now you can start to be a little bit greedy and say, well, damn, if you could split, the next two and then win in Denver, which I say win in Denver, right? Like
It's
win
hard
in
for the
Denver.
Bucks to do.
And it's never easy, no matter who's available, just because of, there's the altitude stuff, like all these different things. So the upside is like they're not playing back-to-backs on any of these games. So, they're not going to, they also don't have the excuse of being not
I know
rested.
that's right.
I think last year they went into Golden State with the Warriors, I think coming off a back-to-back, and Steph was out and they got their doors blown off, and Giannis had maybe his worst game of the season in many respects. So again, like hard to take anything for granted, never trust the Bucks, all that stuff. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, hope springs eternal, Camille. If I was truly a pessimist, would I actually, have written 2,000 stories at the Bucks as a blogger and then do a daily podcast about them? Probably not, because I don't hate myself, Camille. I'm not a glutton for punishment. I don't do this as some sort of, like weird thing because I want to be sad. So and I keep doing it. I keep waking up, and when the Bucks have a game, I keep thinking like, I think they can win tonight. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, you would obviously just love to win at least one of the next two games. I mean, you would love to win both games, but I'm not going to be so naive after having watched the Bucks all season to thinking like, oh, they've figured it out, but we'll see. I mean, obviously the Warriors are 19-17 right now. Steph has been awesome, but they've been obviously a flawed team that, are very beatable. And then, the Lakers, as you mentioned, Austin Reeves has been out, and defensively that team is very flawed. So again, is there some version of the world where, Luka has an off night? And, again, I was happy the last two games, the Wizards and Hornets games, the 3-point shooting by both of the opponents was exhausting, because obviously the Wizards hit 50% of their threes and ultimately won in the small part because of that. The Hornets hit a ton of threes. I think they were also about 50% from three, and nearly beat you. So can we dial up some of the good opponent 3-point luck? That would be my personal request. It was nice to see Gary Trent hit some threes tonight.
Wish AJ could join him.
AJ Green was in the opposite camp again. He's struggled mightily tonight. So it would be nice to have both of those guys shooting well at the same time. And, we'll see what kind of how this can kind of come together a little bit. But yeah, we'll see. But 2-2 would be fine. 3-1 would be fantastic, given kind of what we thought of when we saw this schedule. But you're gonna need to have some trips, and you're gonna need to have some games that you're not favored in that you actually win if you're going to kind of dig out of this and actually get into, dare we say it, a play-in spot, Camille.
One step at a time, right?
Low standards, but let's see if they can get into a play-in spot and then kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think 2-2 is the baseline. Like anything worse than that is a travesty for this road trip, given where this team is. But 3-1, given what's in front of them, feels like it's on the table. If they can pull off a 3-1 road trip, I'm not going to say I'm going to jump off the wagon and start saying we're back or anything like that. But there will be steps in the right direction to continue building some more confidence in what this team might be able to accomplish if they remain healthy throughout the rest of the year. So it's going to be a fun road trip, some late games on that road trip. And with that being said, make sure y'all keep listening to Locked On Bucks. We'll be very clear about when you can expect those post-game episodes. They might be that night. They might be in the morning. Depends on schedules and whatnot. So we'll have you guys covered all throughout the week with
By the way,
games.
Camille, we got to celebrate. We haven't mentioned it yet, but the Bucks defensive rebounding tonight was actually really good. Sacramento Kings,
Where's the applause button? Hold on. They deserve the sound effect.
Only I think 6 offensive rebounds for the Kings. They had a 16 point something % offensive rebound rate. Bucks were in the high 20s. I looked it up. I think this was their second best like percentage differential game comparing their own offensive rebounding relative to the opponent.
Come on, Bucks.
Pathetic, Camille. Let's be clear. I think their best, they were I think in the early November Chicago game, they had a 30% offensive rebound rate, and they held the Bulls to like 17%. So like 13% tonight was like around 12. The fact that this is like the best they've done all season is like insane, but we'll take it.
Baby steps.
Let's start turning that aircraft carrier around in terms of the defensive rebounding. It's, what late is better than never at this point. So we'll kind of see how it kind of goes from there. But yeah, they've had some better games. The Charlotte and in Chicago games were actually not great. 2 games that they won. They've actually been above average in 6 of the last 8, I think, in terms of offensive rebound rate, opponent offensive rebound rate, aka defensive rebound rate. So, maybe things inching in the right direction. We talked about how their fouling has gotten a little bit better, perhaps not so much tonight.
Everyone was fouling in this game.
But yeah, and once again, shout out to Giannis making free throws. We love to see it.
What was he, 11 to 13 tonight from free throw?
11 to 13. Yeah, they had the graphic on the broadcast about, he was like 42, and then he made a few more since he came back. So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, oh, he's cleaned it up, Camille. He looks so much better shooting. Well, yeah, he looks so much better because they're going in. We'll see if it continues. But obviously, him making free throws is always a plus, and tonight was important, right? Because he had a number of trips to the line in the fourth quarter, and he knocked, I think, all those free throws down in the fourth quarter. I know he was 6 of 8 at one point. I think he went 5 for 5 in the fourth quarter. So shout out. My favorite one was when he set up Maxime Reynaud, who's been a very nice surprise for the Kings, the rookie center. You could just see it. He was like top of the key, a little bit to the right. You could totally see it. He was 100% setting him up to go to the spin move. Went to the spin move. Renaud grabbed his left arm, basically put him in the arm bar, and Giannis just went up with his right hand and just laid it in while he was basically being shackled. So yeah, just one more example of the craft and guile of Giannis, the skill of Giannis. Let's keep saying
there you go.
The skill of Giannis, getting to his spots and finishing. So 13 out of 17. By the way, I looked at it the other day. I think he's at 21. I think the NBA stats have him at 20% on mid-range jumpers this season, which is basically half of what he was last year. Yeah. And he still has he's still having the most efficient scoring season of his career. So it's just
sometimes the things that Giannis, it doesn't even make sense in my head where I'm like, wait, what? Like, how does that even compute? But it's greatness. One of the greatest basketball players, not just the greatest buck of all time, but just period. One of the greatest players to ever pick up a basketball for the National Basketball Association. Just bar none, one of the greats. So yeah, shout out to Giannis, shout out to the Bucks, shout out to Kevin Porter Jr., shout out to the team for finding a way and not giving in to the temptation of letting emotions take over the course of the game, staying strong and finishing out the game strong. So thank you all as well for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. That'll do it for us here today. Make sure you subscribe, follow the pod so you get all the latest episodes. And as a reminder, y'all, the Everyday Club is built for you. Get Locked On Bucks ad-free, plus the members-only Discord access and more. Matter of fact, when you sign up, make sure you hit the Discord up so I know that you're in there as well. For those of you on the video side of things, we're going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On the audio, make sure that your second listen is NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. We appreciate you for tuning in. For Frank and myself, we'll catch you later.